Hey guys, welcome to the Wild Bits Show. I'm Upamanyu,
And I'm Meghna.
and we have got a great show planned for you. We are discussing our headline topic of this week, where there's one article which says Arctic has endured a record year in terms of heat as climate warms and climate scientists warn against winter being redefined. But at the same time, there is a glimmer of hope where a paper which studies ice cores um, has discovered something which could help us save glaciers. We also will be talking about some pretty exciting AI stuff. So AI has been um, increasingly being used to monitor, to save wildlife, and do all sorts of stuff. So we'll be exploring two articles pertaining to that. We have some more things from Meghna.
Yeah. So we're also going to be talking about how South Africa is considering a site near an African penguin colony for its third nuclear power plant and what it means for these penguins. In addition to that, we're also going to be talking about how there has been some intentional species introduction to tackle some invasive species or to make sure that the native species can be regenerated. So let's see, because there are two different topics, just like the headline topic. We're also going to be talking about some species that were introduced or that were discovered.
So, um, the headline topic is all about climate change and ice shelves and permafrost and all those kinds of stuff. So this first story is from the Guardian, which is headlined Arctic endured year of record heat as climate scientists warn of winter being redefined. It goes on to say the Arctic experienced a record breaking year of heat from October 2024 to September 2025. The temperatures surpassing all previous records in the past 125 years. NOAA reports the last decade as the warmest on record for the region, heating up to 4 times faster than global average due to fossil fuel emissions. Sea ice reached its lowest maximum extent in 47-year satellite record, with 95% decline in older, thicker ice since the 1980s. Precipitation also hit a record high, increasingly falling as rain rather than snow. June snow cover is now half of what it was 6 decades ago. Scientists describe this as a remarkable shift, redefining winter in the Arctic. Um, I thought of this, Meghna. Um, Imagine that we because during the ice age humans were around, last ice age humans were around, and when the climate and the planet was heating up, the humans were still around. So if we did not have records going back so many years, 125 years or 200 years or whatever, do you think we would have bothered about that? Would this be a natural, would there be any natural science that would bother us without our technology, um,
I
or
think it
bothers
would.
other animals? Like, do
It,
you think it bothers other animals as well?
it definitely bothers other animals because there's so many animals lost to climate change just because they couldn't adapt. But the animals that adapt, probably they just feel like, oh, it's getting hotter. Like, you know
Hmm.
how we say sitting at our home and we're like, oh, it's such a hot day, or winters in Delhi used to be so much colder when we were younger. This is how we literally talk about it, like it was something of the past, while it's something that we're talking about maybe just 20 years back. but still we talk about it in the past and we acknowledge the change. It's just that we don't probably record keep the data, but collectively we do know that it's getting warmer, and we do know because we have grown up. Like if you've been at one place since when you were little, then you could actually see that that
Mm,
there has been change. But I don't know if we would have been as bothered as we are now when we're talking about it, because there's actual data to support this. And I think there was just this news last week or last week that in the winters, like just last week or something, Iceland still had like 20 degrees or something like that,
yeah.
which is really really warm for winter there. And New Zealand had snowstorms
Mm,
in summer. So
yeah.
yeah, and then it's actually funny because people are like, oh, what climate change if there's snow happening in the winters, it's all cold. So people are like, global warming doesn't mean it's warming and it's just warming. It means that there's a cold and hot phase, but
It's a
it means
shifting weather pattern.
exactly.
Like whatever is normal, because the thing about global warming is, of course, these things will come back at us, because if the permafrost and the ice shelves are melting, it's basically flowing into the ocean. And there are island countries, including a country that I currently live in, um, which are very susceptible, very close to the sea level. Let's just put it like that. So, rising sea level means that these countries, these cities will be under the ocean sooner rather than later. But also, the natural world, since the last time the weather was unstable, since that time the weather has been largely stable for couple thousands years, and the wildlife and the natural world and all the ecosystems have fine-tuned themselves and come to depend on that weather pattern, um, to this millisecond almost, in some cases of migrations, in some cases of some species. So a changing weather pattern means that these species are affected deeply.
Yeah, but also, with the glaciers and these ice caps melting, the main issue probably would be going forward water. Like, I think they've spoken about this earlier as well, that that the third world war would be because we don't have enough water to drink.
Mm,
So it's not just the climate or the plants that are being affected, it is also us that's going to be ultimately affected. And the biggest
absolutely.
challenge would be uh water. But also at the same time, I think, oops, this is one of those things, like, how we talk about how sugar is a slow poison or microplastics are a slow poison. Even though global warming and climate change are coming at an incredible speed as opposed to what it should have been, it's just that the effects are a little balmy. Like, even though we talk
Mm.
about things have changed in 20 years, we've kind of accepted that change. We don't talk about it like, oh my God, it's changed so much, we should do something about it. Which is why anything that has to affect us, or, those big changes that the government have to bring, people are not doing that because they're just accepting that, yeah, maybe, the environment will hold on for a little more, the earth will hold on for a little more.
I think the problem, while we have that data, the problem is also that data, because all we have to convince people is this data, because human lifetime does not span over that long. So one generation might only experience a small change before handing it over to the next generation, and the next generation, for them, that is the normal. So there are very few people which have experienced that drastic shift in in their own lifetime. So, and I we all know, like, how difficult it is for us to um accept something we haven't um experienced firsthand. And that is probably why all the billionaires and all the politicians are in climate change denial, because they're in their air conditioned, climate controlled, humidity controlled bubbles, and they're like, what climate change? Like, because they are not experiencing the effects, like, thrust onto them, or day to day, almost minute to minute, almost, because they're in this bubble that they're living in.
Sure, I mean they have access to that bubble, but are you saying that they do not like experience the outside world at all and they do not understand the
I mean,
outside
it
world
might
at
be
all?
for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that. I don't know. That is my theory, that because we don't like. So when we started, we had a normal for us, and that normal has maybe shifted a little bit, but it hasn't changed drastically. And by the time that drastic change is to be experienced, we'll be long gone, and we'll have handed the world over to the next generation. So our experience is only that short while, and only thing we have to prove or to support our hypotheses that the world is warming, and that prove that is all the data that we have collected, and that doesn't span one single lifetime. So I think, because nobody can experience in their own lifetime, and people who have experienced, like some of the great conservationists, like Jane Goodall, like David Attenborough, um, who have lived a long life and have always talked about this, can relate from their own experiences. But I don't think
I
most people can.
I wouldn't call David Attenborough a conservationist, but okay, that's for another day. But yeah, but I think it's not about one lifetime. It's your own lifetime also. You can see even something like the Delhi winters that I was talking about. You can see the difference. Also, when we go somewhere like any touristy spot, any glacier, any place that has snow, they will tell you, like the locals will tell you, everyone will tell you that, oh, maybe 10 years back or 15 years back, there used to be so much snow in this time. Everybody can see it in their own lifetime. There is a visible difference. Like my aunt who lives in New York was talking about how there's less snow every year, so now there's no shoveling required because there's not enough snow that they need to shovel through their driveways, maybe just once or twice, as opposed to like a whole lot of times like 10, 15 years back. So it's there in your face. Like you don't have to live two lifetimes to know how warm it's getting or how different things are. But at the
but
same
but
time,
why then is it so difficult for people, for anybody, to understand the impacts of climate?
because you don't want to accept, right? It's the same thing like how if sugar is killing you because it's killing you so slowly, or if it's like a slow poison, you don't bother about it as much. Like microplastics, you don't bother about it so much. Like you are like, okay, yes, it's a problem, but we'll tackle it when it becomes a real problem, when it starts killing us, like when it's everywhere, like when the water level has risen to the uh, to the level that you absolutely cannot survive and you need to do something about it. That is when action will happen. Just like COVID, only when people started falling dead straight on the roads was when people were like, okay, this is scary, COVID is real. And then they started taking like extreme measures. So I think as a species we do that. Like we stay in denial till it's there in our face that we cannot absolutely deny it anymore, and then we have to take extreme actions.
Hmm. Which I don't know. People might come up with some intelligent solutions when it is time for that, to take that extreme actions. But I don't know if this case it will work that way, because these changes will be very drastic when it comes to it. Sea levels have already risen by 5-10 centimeters, depending on where you live, and it will keep on rising. That is something that will impact first, because humans have lived in very warm climates. Humans probably can adapt to a few more degrees of climate, warm a warmer climate, or a few more degrees of colder climate. But the one thing we won't be able to adapt to is literally flooding, like the sea flooding. There's no way we can stop the sea, at least not that I know of. So that flooding we won't be able to stop. So I
Yeah,
think
and they're
that
saying that climate refugees are going to be like the next big problem, like not war refugees or not other refugees, but climate refugees are probably going to be the biggest problem, like because you might not have a home and you have to find another place to call home, and we know how that works, like even though people want to support each other when it comes to housing them into your country, most countries are not okay with that.
Mm, yeah, I mean that is a reality we will have to face, and I think at that point it will be too late to take any action. It would be like irreversible almost, because once that ice shelf has melted, we won't be able to do anything about it. And our discussion question is along those lines: that can we as a global community adjust to a rapidly changing Arctic? And by Arctic, we basically mean the ice shelves and the permafrost, where all the fresh water, all the world's ice is largely trapped. Um, and uh, uh, yeah,
Yeah, but
from the
it's not.
looks of it, we wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
adapt to it.
and it's not just the ice melting that is the only problem there. The problem is also how they talk about, how there's a lot of bacteria or different diseases that were trapped
Mm,
inside the ice, especially in the Antarctic. And they say that if that thaws out and those bacteria and virus that were dead for so many years or were sleeping for so many years, we would be exposing them, and we do not know what kind of fresh hell that would be. So
mm,
there are like a lot of things when it comes to that, and we would also be losing all our polar species like polar bears and penguins and seals, because they all need the ice to survive. So if we don't have them, um, it's going to be very different, and we can see that rapid change already happening. We can see that change happening with a lot of animals that are not able to adapt. So it does seem very bleak, but I think because it seems bleak, there's also a story of a little bit of hope.
yeah, there is a story of a little bit of a glimmering hope. This is from the Hindu. It is titled "Extremely Exciting," in quotes, the ice core that could help save glaciers. This goes on to say Japanese scientist Yoshinori Lizuka or Izuka is studying unique ice core sample from the Pamir Mountains in Tajikistan, hoping to understand why its glaciers are resisting global melting, a phenomena known as Pamir Karakoram anomaly. While most glaciers wildlife face rapid disappearance, with thousands predicted to vanish in coming decades, this region has seen glacial growth. Izuka's team drilled 105-meter ice columns, storing one in Antarctica and analyzing the other in Hokkaido University. The research, supported by the Ice Memory Foundation and Swiss Polar Institute, aims to uncover the mechanisms behind the anomaly. Success could offer strategies to protect and potentially revive glaciers globally, mitigating the impact of climate change. Um, Again, this is a study that has been done, so would say still in its early stages. But I think, as we have discussed before as well, these kinds of studies will mean that we understand the life cycle of a glacier better, and we know what's causing the melt. We already know what's causing the melt, but in this case, we'll know what this glacier has so special that it's resisting the melt. And once we understand that, we might be able to use it to save other glaciers. But the problem for some people in thinking that way might be that it's a band-aid solution that will apply if there's a chemical of some kind, or if there is uh a special structure of the ice that is forming there, something we can apply to other glaciers, etc. Then we will jump at that opportunity. I'm very sure we'll jump at that opportunity if there is something special about this glacier and that can be replicated to other glaciers. Then I'm sure we'll jump at that opportunity to use that as a band-aid solution, or as a solution which would mean we can carry on our ways, but at the same time, the glaciers won't melt as fast, maybe. um,
Yeah, and I've shared the article for you. So that has a photo which shows the scientist Yoshinori Izuka is cutting a slice to, study it.
mhm. From the ice core, yeah, very cool. um, Yeah, I find ice cores very cool. I think there is a ice core library which stores ice cores from all over the world for scientists to study later, and it's literally these long tubes of ice cores just stored in deep freezers. And yeah, it is very interesting how much we can understand about the planet, because the ice would have formed at different um, periods during the planet's history, and it almost shows a fossil record of all the different changes the weather patterns have gone through. So it's a document of Earth's weather over the last millions of years. Um,
Is it possible that like the Pamir ranges or the glaciers there are slightly even growing, or at least are resilient because they're not at the poles and they're up in the mountains? Is that a possibility? But no, right? Like, because other glaciers everywhere else are disappearing, so it's just this one glacier up in the mountains, and not in the
I'm
poles.
sure
That's
there will
not.
be other glaciers in the same belt which will be receding, and that's why I think this is called the Pamir Karakoram anomaly. Um, this is very interesting. We obviously we don't understand. We're just reporting on this. We're just sharing this with you. We don't understand the exact intricacies of what's going on here, and we will make an effort to get the scientist Yoshinori Izuka. Will try and get the scientist on our show, um, if um, they can share more about this research, and if they have any clues as to why this is happening, or any starting points, because as far as this article is concerned, I think we are still in the process of understanding this. It will certainly be exciting. It might not be replicable easily, or it might not be replicable at all, but it's certainly exciting to see this one glacier resisting this. And understanding this might also help us find other glaciers like this, with similar properties or similar um, I don't know, coordinates, similar latitudes and or longitudes, which might give us some more hope. But that is all, I think. That is all it can do. Like, it can give us hope that something's happening, but all in all, I think the situation is pretty bleak, as Meghna described it.
Yeah, at least this is hope, and we will see in the future if the study holds any kind of unlocking for the rest of the areas that it can be replicated there. But I think, as far as we know, nature, every place has its own beauty and its own complexity, and we do not know if it can be replicated. But the future will tell us. As for now, we have to kind of accept that the ice caps are melting and the glaciers are melting, and it is really serious. we need to accept that.
But yeah, and I always trip on this. Like, what is it that we can do to make sure that this is like our contribution is done? Because we can't stop driving realistically. We can't stop using our air conditioning realistically. We can probably, you know, stave off it for a few days, but I'm pretty sure we'll go back to it.
uh
Like,
the 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 I think the problem also is that there's a cycle, right? So like the earth gets warmer, then you start getting these air conditioners. So there are areas even in India, places like Bangalore and all that did not use air conditioners like a few, maybe a decade back, but now they're using because their summers are warmer, their weather patterns are changing, and they do not have the same cold weather or the cool weather that they had. So you know the weather is warming, you get an AC, then then because of the AC the weather is getting warmer because of the, even though you don't have as much CFCs or anything, but the amount of power consumption and everything else that you're doing, and then it makes it even warmer. So what do you do in those kind of cases? Because it's warmer you get an AC, but because of the AC also it has its own impact.
but it is not only because it's getting warmer. Like, the appetites of people, of us as a society, as a civilization, is also getting weirder, I would say. And let me explain that. Like, even if we don't require AC, because it provides that comfort, we will have an AC in our homes. And if it's a centrally plumbed AC, we will just keep it on at a temperature of whatever degrees, uh, all day
And
long.
wouldn't you be the prime example? You remember that little fan that you used to run like the whole day around, and we would always tell you that, oops, you keep running that 2000 watt whatever fan, and you're like, oh, my feet feel what cold, warm, whatever it was.
Yeah,
And then I
my
had to,
feet.
yeah, and I had to get you that feet warmer thing or whatever in which your feet didn't fit. But I mean, if you thought about it, the amount of electricity we were using or the amount of that, so even you are an example, I'm an example, we have to do better than that, right? When we tell species, then
So that's what I'm saying. Like, what is that? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we can't do that. We like I certainly can't do that. But what is that solution, or what is that one thing that people can do
see,
that?
I will tell you, it's going back to traditional methods. So even now, if you go into the mountains in India, the winters are harsh, they're peak. There are like people have those what do you say, not bonfire but the little fireplaces kind of thing, but they have them not in the bedrooms. Some of them might have it in their living room with a little bit of wood in it, or people like either burn the wood outside, but they don't actually have a heater in their rooms or have a AC in
But
their
I don't
rooms.
think, Meghna, that is pragmatic for an urban lifestyle. That's not pragmatic.
No, but if people can survive, then we have to go back to that level where we can survive. You don't have to have that comfort all the time. Like you can also choose, right? Like you can
Like,
choose to have.
that's what I'm saying. Like, that will never, that this narrative, I don't think we can ever sell this to anyone.
No, but you have to do a conscious choice yourself, right? When you're doing like, let's say, a diet choice for the environment, then this comes into it. Like everything else that you also purchase and everything else also that you use, just doing a one change wouldn't help. You have to do multiple changes across things. But I'm not saying like you make yourself completely uncomfortable, but you at least make sure that you're not like misusing or overusing, because the governments may step in whenever they have to step in, but till that time we have to do whatever we can do, because we have to leave this earth in a livable condition for the future generation. And at this point of time, I feel like even 15 years or 20 years down the line, it might not be livable at all.
Hmm. I agree there. I struggle with this a lot. That how do we keep going? Um,
Small changes,
and
small changes, not big changes, but whatever you can do at an individual level, do that, but at the same time, because when we say, oh, the government should do this, but at the same time, what are you doing? Like yesterday there was some inauguration of something in India, and there were like these flower pots and everything, and overnight around 7,000 flower pots were stolen from that event.
Mm.
So when we say that, oh, the government should do better and they should take care of things, but the normal people are also lacking civic sense, right? So the change has to come from both sides. So people also have to change and the government also has to change, and then it has to like be together. But we can't expect just the government to do one thing and us to do nothing.
No, but I don't think the government has the option to change or to bring about any kind of change in this regard. Like the options in front of us is less driving of cars, fossil fuels, lesser use of all these refrigerants that we use to cool our homes or cool our homes, basically, not heat but cool our homes, shifting to hydroelectric or renewable electricity generation. That I think government has a huge handover. And the fourth one is eating less meat. So these are the four solutions that we have in front of us. Any of which, i- if we want to implement at an individual level, means letting go of something that you hold dearly and what makes you feel comfortable both physically and mentally.
Yes, but that is how you will have to live, because sadly we don't have an option. Like how we talk about, how our grandparents or even our parents for that matter, they did not have to think about climate change. They did not have to think about global warming when, let's say, planning for their children or planning for other things. But our generation sadly needs to, and the generations going forward will also have that burden, because sadly at this point of time where we are, we see the earth rapidly changing. So our great grandparents could afford to have like 12, 13 children and be like, oh, what's the harm in that? But now we have to think that, oh, are we bringing a child
I
into
mean,
this
people are
kind of.
still having, 12, 13 children, and some governments are planning to give medals to women for that, for having bearing, more
that's a
than
different
five
that's a
children
different
and whatnot. But I think I have got my answer. That's the reason why I don't think people are not wanting to change or do not understand climate science or do not understand, people including us, at least me. I think we are not understanding climate change or not understanding climate science. I think it's the comfort that we don't want to get let go of.
I think it's one, the comfort, and second, that we probably look at our past generations and be like, oh, they did not have to sacrifice certain things, but they were also living a really frugal life. Like if we compare it to our great
Yes,
grandparents.
that's what we keep saying, right? Like this comfortable, this purchase power, not to worry about wars, not to worry about like big wars, or not to worry about other amenities. This is the most comfortable the human race has been ever. Even the least comfortable today is more comfortable than, a person 100 years ago, the richest person 100 years ago.
True, true. But think about what cost it comes at. Like when we want these 10-minute deliveries, or these we have these huge number of fast food chains delivering to you, and you have like everything at the at a click, like your Amazon thing. Whatever you purchase on Amazon gets delivered tomorrow, this and that. So convenience comes at the price of the environment, though. Like, all of these bikes that are being ridden, or all of the cars that are being ridden for delivery, everything adds up to it, and also it adds up to our health, because we now are actually promoting or actively indulging into processed everything. So there was a time like when our great grandparents, even if they had more children, they had like better lives because of the kind of lifestyle they used to lead. But the kind of lifestyle that we have right now with the comfort, that's not great either. It's not a good comfort. I mean, like back then people didn't need gyms to have a good body or a healthy body. Now you actually go to a gym to maintain this body. Like you go in a car to a gym, and then you work out on the treadmill, and then you come back, which is the irony that you could have just walked somewhere and you would have gotten the same workout. So we deliberately choose, like, really, I wouldn't even say classy, but we deliberately choose like better and better and better conveniences for us, while the inconvenience is not really an inconvenience.
Hmm. I mean, I certainly hope that um, we would be able to make those changes. Some changes definitely, large corporations and things like that, they can definitely propagate, and a lot of corporations are moving towards that, net carbon zero and all these things. There has been a huge drive to achieve those goals at an organization level, so I think that is a very good place to start in. And at an individual level, I think there is, as we keep talking about, there is a large shift towards veganism and things like that. So I think um,
I think the biggest
if
thing that at least the governments can do is with renewable energy, something as
mm,
simple as solar. If your country gets a lot of solar light, then in the cities itself, like structures wherever you can fill it up with solar panels, then fill those up. Like, why are you going to a desert like 300 kilometers away and also disrupting whatever lives in the desert when you have enough areas? Like, there was this, I think, like you would have these car parks, you'd have these glass buildings, or you would have different kind of structures. You can use all of these structures to build, like have solar panels on. You have enough places in the city, and that might
mm,
actually just change the power generation, and it might actually help the climate so much than whatever we're generating. Secondly, I think one of the biggest problems we have at the name of convenience, now that AI has become so popular and people are using it to generate memes and photos and everything, AI is actually a big consumer. Like even AI and everything that runs on a server, like all the
mm.
bitcoins and other currency, they use the maximum amount of electricity. Those kind of things definitely have to move to renewable, the kind of electricity and heat generation that these activities do.
Yeah, I think that is. I mean, I am all for AI being gone, but since it's here and it's here to stay, all the you know data centers that left, right, and center, all these companies are building to get more and more power and more generation out of it. I think definitely needs to move to a renewable source, as Meghna said, but also all the heat they're pumping out. I don't know what we can do about that, because that heat
Maybe
will be there.
maybe that heat can also be generated into electricity. Like if you have a way that the heat can power some kind of turbine or some kind of equipment, and that can be converted into power like electricity or anything else, that could also be useful, because all of this heat generation, I think this happens also. I read about it somewhere, like I'm not sure,
Very
Sweden or
small
somewhere.
scale, very small
Yeah,
scale though. The problem is
Sweden
there.
or somewhere, like this, all this heat generation that's happening from the service, they're using it to like heat people's houses, like especially the flooring and everything. And I think they're heating the pavements wherever there are these pavements where, because of the heat, then there's no ice on top of them. So that heat
That is
can
a
be
good
used.
use.
That heat can be used, and that heat can be um what do you say, sent like to other places, if that is the thing that your country can use. So I feel like all the things that are at our convenience, we need to use those as well to make our lives better, but also make the environment's life better.
Yeah, I think there is. I think we have discussed a few things and gone back and forth on a few things. I think there are some cool solutions there, or there can be some cool solutions. Human ingenuity is always something I'm surprised by and admire. So I think there are some cool solutions there, and people working towards it, without like trying to form like a win-win situation, for keeping the comfort, whereas also trying to save the environment. There are some solutions there, probably. I'm pretty sure of that. So it's only a matter for us, the corporations, the greedy corporations, as I would put it, to choose that solution over something which is cheaper but absolutely not effective for the environment and for at an individual level as well. We need to choose something which is good for the environment, but also gives us comfort. But at the end of the day, is also good for the environment. So I think that's the parting thought I would have there.
Yeah, let's see what the future holds. For now, things aren't great. It might be great on an individual level because you have all the convenience, but it's not great at a global level when you think about climate change and the earth.
Mm,
So we have to see how things proceed, especially for the future generation. And we really do not know the kind of burdens they would have to,
mm,
um, like take on their shoulders once whatever kind of world we leave for them.
true. True. I think we have talked about this. We've covered everything that needed to be covered here. Um, why
Yeah,
not move to the
let's.
next one?
Yep. So the next topic is about the penguins in South Africa. South Africa considers a site near African penguin colony for the third nuclear power plant. Eskom, South Africa's state electricity company, is reconsidering Thaispant and Bantam's Clip, um, Bantam's Clip as potential sites for its third nuclear power plant, despite previously rejecting them. A new environmental impact assessment is underway for the 5,200 megawatt facility, with Thaispant as the primary focus and Bantam's Clip as an alternative. Bantam's Cliff's selection raises concerns due to its unique coastal ecosystem and proximity to a critically endangered African penguin colony. Conservationists argue the infrastructure risks are unacceptable. The first plant, Coburg, provides 4% of the nation's power. Previous plans for a second plant faced challenges, ultimately choosing Fontaine. Public participation regarding the limited site options is also questioned. ESCOM states lessons from the prior EIA will be applied. And our discussion question for this is on similar lines. It says, can energy needs justify potential ecological damage? For me, the answer is absolutely no. What about you?
I think this is um, one area, like we were talking about the last topic, and there, there was little to no choice that we had in the matter directly, but this is something that we have a direct um, impact over. So why are we choosing then to not do it in a way that's beneficial for the environment? We could have chosen not to do this in a way which is so harmful to the environment. So why are we choosing not to do that? That's what baffles me about this.
I think the main problem that is happening, at least with this, is maybe the kind of areas they have to scout. The areas that they have to scout are primarily areas that will have some or the other impact. But sadly, in this case, because there's no public participation as well, there's not a lot of public furor that can go into assessing like if this is a good idea or not. Sadly, I mean, the penguins are already critically endangered, and if you're going to bring a power plant and all the construction into picture and all the waste that would go in to the the nearby bodies, then I think it's really going to be hard for these penguins to survive.
Yeah, no, I find it very hard to believe that there was no other location for the power plant to. It might have costed more money. It might have costed more resources to build that plant, but I certainly believe that there must have been another site, um, you know, except these two, um, to set up a power plant. And don't get me wrong, like nuclear power is good. Um, Nuclear power is okay in terms of renewability and in terms of the not in terms of renewability, but in terms of the um, you know byproducts that it produces. It's a clean cleaner, much cleaner source of energy than coal generation, especially, which is the primary method of power generation in most places around the world. But it also has a lot of impacts. We have seen we know about Chernobyl and a couple of other nuclear power plants exploding in Japan and some other places around the world. So I certainly believe that this was in our control. This was in the government's control to choose a site which was better and for the environment, but for some reason, might be money, might be political influence, might be some other thing, that they chose these sites. I certainly believe that.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, even though nuclear is a cleaner source of energy, and the kind of side effects it can have if anything goes wrong are also quite catastrophic. So that has to be taken into account when you're building a power plant, just to make sure that anything that could seep out of it or leak out of it, they have to make sure that it's very far away from humans. And in that bid, basically, they find these kind of places where they put the penguins into distress instead. And that is what is happening in this case. And sadly, because public participation is not really key to this decision, it might go forward and we might actually have this nuclear power plant at this area. And then once the penguins disappear, then they'll be like, oh my God, how did the penguins disappear?
Mm, I think that's a sad part, and
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
I mean, it says in the article, it says Bantam's Cliff is a globally unique coastal
Mm,
environment with extremely high ecological value, and um, I mean, this is actually like a quote by one of the non-profit conservation people. But still, when it has that much ecological value, then the project needs to be taken into consideration. That area needs to be taken into consideration if there's absolutely no other area than that area, and it was rejected once. So it's funny that they couldn't find any other place and they came back to the same place. I mean, once it was rejected, it should have been kept in the rejected list, but in this case, it's back into the let's consider it list.
yeah, I think it's again we have showed and spoke about my disdain of lobbying and the corporations and the corporate greed in general. So I think this is a case of that. I am pretty certain. I want to, like one might say, I want to believe that, but I certainly do believe that this is a case of lobbying and corporate greed and whatnot. Because I don't see any other explanation why this had to be the place to do something as serious as setting up a nuclear energy plant. It is a pretty serious consideration. However much better it is for the environment, it is a serious consideration overall. So,
Yeah, and here it says that Bantam's Cliff neighbors Dyer Island Nature Reserve, which hosts southern right whales, Cape fur seals, sharks, dolphins, abalone, and seabirds, including about 1,000 breeding pairs of African penguins. So it's a really diverse and a really like thick area of this amalgamation of a lot of different ocean creatures, and to lose that for something where we could have avoided it, that's actually kind of sad, that as a species we could give up on something that's so like ecologically beautiful and dense, and replace it with maybe a power plant, and then we might not see these creatures again.
yeah, so I think if anyone from the decision makers are listening to this, or if anyone from South Africa is listening to this, um, you know, you have the power, you have the voice to raise this, to talk about this with your local representative. And I think people often forget the power of writing a letter or writing an email or showing your you know showing giving reasons and showing your um opposition to a certain decision the government has made, especially in a democratically governed country. You certainly have the power to do that. You certainly can do that. And if anyone from there is listening, then we would urge you, implore you to check out some other options there. And I'm sure that there might be a group or a scientist or someone who already has an alternative solution. It's just listening to that alternative solution and accepting the compromises you as a corporation who is setting up this plant have to make. And if those compromises um, I'm sure those compromises cannot outweigh the compromise this ecological system, the ecosystem has to make if this power plant goes through.
Yeah, and I think what Oops brought up is actually quite crucial. Like, if the public wants to, a simple petition or even just a lot of signatures can make the government think. In French Polynesia last year, um, a humpback whale that was migrating was struck, and there were these images, like really gory visuals of half of its face taken off by the boat. And that video propelled people to sign up for the petition. And this year, they have successfully actually changed the laws. So the government heard the
Mm.
people, and the government made the changes because of how people came across. So people across the world signed up for this petition. And now there are speeding laws of how much speed you can maintain when you're in the area of the whales. So change can happen, and there are very beautiful changes that do happen. So we need to keep working towards these kind of changes. We cannot give up, and we cannot say that, oh, if the government is doing something, only the government needs to make change. Whatever, at whatever capacity you can, even a simple petition is enough to make a change.
Yes, and I think that is the crux of the matter, and it's up to the government then to figure out the alternative. It's not up to you to figure out the alternative. You just have to voice the concerns. You have to support your opposition or your point with some proof and some scientific evidence, and ultimately then you're handing it off to the government that this is not something you can do. This will cause irreparable damage to this ecosystem. Now go figure out where else you can put this plant. Because I can understand the energy needs might be crucial for the government as well to deliver electricity to a certain amount of people or to meet electricity needs of you know certain data centers, for example, for the economic growth or whatnot. So it might be important to the government, but I certainly believe there is a better site and a better solution which does not end up harming the ecosystem or the environment as deeply as it would if this one goes through.
Yep. So I think yeah, I think that's all we have on this topic. We'll have to
Mm.
see what it develops into, if Bantam's clip is actually skipped, or if they actually end up making a power plant there.
Yeah. Um. Cool. Let me talk about a new species one. Before we move on to the new topic. Um, so this is a report from the Guardian again. A pink platypus spotted in Gippsland, far from a monochrome metronome. Sorry, monochrome monotreme. A Victorian fisher, Cody Sty, Styli, Stylianu, recently captured footage of a remarkably pink platypus in Gippsland, um, Australia. Initially mistaken it for a trout, Stilanu filmed the unusual monotreme feeding in a tannin stained river. He believes this pinky may be the same individual he spotted years prior, now larger. Online speculation suggested albinism, but biologist Jeff Williams of the Australian Platypus Conservancy clarified the platypus is simply lighter in color, a natural variation within the species. Platypus coloration varies and sightings are rare. Many go a lifetime without spotting one. Stilanu is protecting the location to safeguard the animal, which is a great thing on part of um, the fishermen who discovered this. I'll just quickly play the video. This sounds quite interesting. Yeah, there you go. There is it's obviously a video filmed with a phone, so obviously not the best of quality, but yeah, there you go. You can see the pink
Beak
beak.
of the platypus. Yep. And did you know? Interestingly, platypus. The word that they've used here, monotreme. Monotreme is uh, are mammals of the order Monotremata, and they're the only mammals that still in existence lay eggs instead of
Mhm.
bearing live young.
Mm.
So
Yes,
yes,
yes.
they are a mammal, but they lay eggs, which is
That
very very interesting. So yeah, so this is like the cool fact for today that monotreme is a different class, and they're still mammals, but they lay eggs.
yes, yes. That is a cool one. Echidnas are also
Part
uh,
of it. Yep.
part of that class. There used to be a um lot of other animals that have gone extinct, before the humans were around. But yeah, there used to be this whole class of them. Sorry, whole lot of them around. But I think the only two that have remained is these a few of them, echidnas and the platypus. Yeah,
Yep. Yep. They're mostly the ones. Yep.
cool.
Uh, okay. So we can either I'll also do another
Yeah, do it.
yeah. So I'll also do another species. So this is a new pitcher plant is found in the Philippines that may already be critically endangered. A new carnivorous plant species, Nepenthes megastoma, large mouth. It says basically it translates to large mouth, has been discovered on the Palawan Island in the Philippines, found growing on inaccessible limestone cliffs within the Puerto Princesa Subterranean River National Park. The plant utilizes pitcher shaped leaves to trap and digest insects. Initially mistaken for a Bornean species, detailed study confirmed its unique characteristics. Currently, N. megastoma is known from only 3 locations with an estimated population of around 25 individual plants. Researchers express concern about its limited range and small population size, suggesting it may already be critically endangered. Further surveys are needed, but its precarious existence highlights the vulnerability of specialized plant life. And I will just share the photo of this uh, plant with you. So, oops, I don't know. Like when you were younger, did like pitcher plants and all these the Venus flytraps, did they ever really excite you? Like it made me very curious. Like I was always super curious about how there were plants that could like trap and eat insects or trap and even eat like something bigger. They could even eat like lizards and different kind of things. So this is the pitcher plant that they're talking about. Obviously, we're not scientists, so we wouldn't be able to tell you the exact differences that this pitcher plant has with the other pitcher plant. Even the Filipino people couldn't tell till they researched how it was different to the Bornean species. But pitcher plants are just beautiful. Like they're just so beautiful to look at.
Yeah, and I think very curious thing of Mother Nature, and an example that how we can't box something into a particular category. We can't box something into um, a particular, yeah, thought process as we like to box things. We can't do that. There are plants which are carnivorous.
Yeah, and
So
that's amazing. I mean, and the videos that you always see, um of the Venus flytraps and the pitcher plant. I mean, with the pitcher plant, once it's inside and it closes its lid, you can't see anything. At least with the Venus flytraps, you can actually like see something struggling, and then it's like slowly closing. Um, that's miraculous how nature is. Like, you have these plants that are hallucinogenic, and then there are these plants that are for food, and then there are these plants that can eat other insects. So I mean, it's just incredible how nature is.
yeah, and there is a TED talk that I would definitely recommend. Um, you guys check out. It's about the Venus flytrap, and how it can actually count. So the gist of the TED talk is that it takes a lot of energy for the plant to close its two flaps to trap something. So it wants to be absolutely sure that there is something inside before it makes that, spares that energy to close its flaps. So there are small hairs inside that plant. And when exactly 12 hairs are stimulated one after the other, then only then the trap closes. And the scientist demonstrated this in the TED Talk on stage by taking a piece of forceps and just stimulating the hairs 12 times. So that is basically evidence that they have some kind of neurological function going on, which is enabling them to keep a track of how many hairs have been stimulated, and only after the plant has made sure that there is definitely something sitting inside will it ever close.
That
um
is very interesting, but I think we should also put this in the pinned comment so that people can go
I
back and watch that TED talk. But when we say 12 hairs, would it be hairs or hair? Like, I always have this thing with the fish and fishes and hair and hairs. Like, I
actually,
think,
I'm not sure.
yeah, I think with hair it's not multiple, but with fish multiple usage is okay. I'm not sure, but yeah, either way, the hairs thing is something that is always up to debate, that we do
I
not know what.
think I think if you're talking about a collective, then it's hair. But if you're talking about strands, then it's hairs. I think that's how it goes. But I think, yeah, we can
Maybe
leave
then it
this
would
to
be
the
yeah, it
grammar
might be
podcast to figure
strands.
this out.
Yeah, it might be strands that time. It might not be hairs, but it's okay. We'll get back to that. But that was really interesting, and even looking at that picture plant was really interesting. Let's get back to our main topics.
Cool. I have spoken. I'm very vocal about my disdain for AI in general, especially generative AI, in general. But I also kind of have to accept that it is here to stay. Um, the tech gurus are, predicting that this is all a bubble and it will go away. But only future can tell what will happen of that side of AI. But there is another side to AI which can be increasingly beneficial for the environment and all the animals that reside in that ecosystem. And it has been definitely used more and more by, you know, governments and organizations around the world to track animals, to reduce human animal conflict, to we did a story on shark nets and how AI powered drones will be helping, has a huge chance of helping and be much better than shark nets in preventing shark attacks on beaches. So we wanted to cover these two stories about both from India, uh, where AI is being used to mitigate some wildlife human animal conflicts. So, this first story is from published in the Times of India and is headlined Indian Railways strengthens AI based system to protect wildlife on railway tracks. Indian Railways is bolstering wildlife protection with an AI powered intrusion detection system, IDS, utilizing a distributed acoustic system, DAS. The technology detects animals like elephants, lions, and tigers on tracks, providing alerts to up to 500
Meters.
meters in advance to locomotive pilots and control rooms. Following a successful initial implementation of 141 railway kilometers in Northeast Frontier Railway, where a recent Rajdhani Express collision tragically killed 7 elephants. Tenders have been awarded to expand coverage to a total of 1,122 railway kilometers nationwide. This proactive measure aims to prevent animal casualties and balance train operations with conservation efforts, marking a significant step towards a safer wildlife passage. And I think this is something that I do commend the government for. I think we did a story last episode as well, with the red markings on the roads, etc. So this, I think, is a brilliant, like, uncomparable use of AI. And in my view, at least, this is how, like, this and there are some other implementations, like, medicine and whatnot. Those are the areas that AI is really powerful in, and AI should be used in very rapidly. At least, like, even if all the generative stuff is being used by everyone around the world, this is something that governments and corporations should heavily invest in and choose to invest in. And you can already see, like, how much of a difference it is making in terms of
But
human animal conflict.
tell me this, like, if it's providing alerts up to just 500 meters or half a
Mm,
kilometer in advance, is that
mm.
enough to actually make them put the brakes? Because these kind of railways that operate at these speeds, they probably need alerts way more than that to apply the brakes in advance.
I think the 0 point, like, I don't think that the 0.5 kilometers would have been a discussion or a limitation by the AI company who is implementing it. I think the 0.5 kilometers would have come from the railways. I think they would be sure that they can apply those brakes. 0.5 kilometers is the minimum they need. 500 meters is the minimum they need to apply those brakes. I think this, because there is no limitation of how far this signal can travel. It will be traveling through, electrical cables, and it can travel 100 kilometers if there is the need. So I think this would have come from the railways saying, this is the
Yeah, I
minimum we
mean,
need.
it has to be, yeah, if that is the minimum, yes, because they have to get that alert and then they have to take action immediately. So it has to be something which they can actually take action in that much time once they get the alert. As we've seen, like especially in India, it happens a lot of times because the train is running, if it's on a curve, or you cannot see. The railways, they always say, are something that cannot break right at the end. So if you're on the track, or if there are elephants or any other animals on the track, sadly the train isn't able to stop in time. So hopefully this AI powered detection system is expanding and it helps everywhere else, because this would be a great way for the animals to also be safe and for the trains to also be safe.
Yeah, both the railways and the animals. Um, this is a great use of AI. And I feel like governments around the world should take notice of this and introduce more and more AI powered monitoring systems. Where there is human animal conflict, where there is a possibility of human animal conflict, and so on and so forth. Excuse me. The second story is also from, sorry, it's from Times of it's from India Today, and it is headlined AI to monitor wildlife in Tamil Nadu forests, reduce human animal conflict. It goes on to say Tamil Nadu has launched India's first AI powered command center for human animal conflict management, addressing escalating conflicts between humans and animals like elephants and leopards. The center utilizes advanced data analytics, real time tracking, and predictive AI to anticipate and manage these situations, moving beyond traditional reactive methods. Increasing urbanization and fragile forest corridors contribute to frequent encounters, causing crop damage, property loss, and casualties. The AI system integrates data from satellites, sensors, cameras, and citizen reports to issue early warnings to personnel and residents. This proactive approach aims to efficiently allocate resources, preventing fatalities and improving real time decision making for both community safety and wildlife conservation. I think a similar thing was done uh, a few years ago. I don't remember, but I saw this in one of the nature documentaries, where an SMS based system was implemented in one of the tea gardens, I think, and basically who, that it was like a group SMS thing where um, the officials, whoever has spotted an elephant, will send out an alert which will go to all the residents around that area to one make sure that they don't come in contact, because obviously elephants have low eyesight, um, where they won't be able to see what's coming, and that interaction between a human and an elephant can be fatal. But also to make sure that they take necessary measures to make way for those elephants to pass through if they're sort of migrating through. But again, this is another great example of AI being used for the right reasons.
Yeah, and I think the SMS thing probably yes, because but it I think takes way longer because it's not really like a thing that can reach faster. You'll have to kind of broadcast it around and hope that people are seeing it. In this case,
Mhm.
because the AI is working real time, and the alerts that it provides, it might be as simple as an app on your phone or something else. It might help the people prepare themselves better, or there might be a way to divert the wildlife from there. So this
Mhm.
is really great because I think human wildlife conflict is one of the biggest issues across the world at this moment, and especially in India. Um, a lot of people are staying at the fringes of the forest, so they are the ones that are at the highest risk of the conflict. But they're also the ones that have the highest tolerance for conflict. So something like this would help them be better prepared, and it would keep the animals at ease and keep the humans at ease as well.
True. I think this is a very effective use of AI, very great use of AI. A lot can be done in this space. There are a lot of, like, growing urbanization means that there will be more and more human animal conflicts in more areas across countries, across fringes, across those areas where the encroachment is happening into the forest. So I think these kinds of methodologies will become more and more prevalent as time goes by.
Yeah. So we need to just see how and what it's a great start both in terms of the railways and here. So let's see how it expands and what great things we can do with AI going forward, and if we have any stories of how successfully human animal wildlife conflicts have been avoided, or if success stories of where these AI systems have saved elephants or other animals from coming under a train, we will keep you updated.
True. That is something that we um will do, because this is certainly you know one of the greatest uses of technology that we can make in the recent times with the advent of AI and whatnot.
Yep.
But Anyway, that was all we had to say about those topics. Let's move on to the next one, Meghna.
Yeah, and we have another double topic this time. So this is about um, intentional introduction and also regenerating native species. So let's get on to the first story. It's called Snails. Oh no, the first one is actually, yeah. Crayfish, weevils, and fungi released in UK to tackle invasive species such as Japanese knotweed. Britain is deploying crayfish, weevils, and fungi as biological controls against invasive species like Japanese knotweed, signal crayfish, and Himalayan balsam, aiming to revitalize native ecosystems. Driven by government targets to reduce invasive species establishment by 50% by 2030, the Animal and Plant Health Agency breeds these agents in labs for release. This approach focuses on species established for a long time, proving difficult to eradicate through traditional methods. Scientists carefully select agents to target pests without harming other organisms, reducing reliance on manual labor. For example, the South American weevil Listronotus elongatus is being used to combat floating pennywort, showing promising results in reducing plant biomass. While I think when we were scripting, Oops and me were discussing how and this has happened a lot of times. Like you start out with a good intention that like this would help like combat these invasive species, but then we introduce something and then the introduced species kind of take over, and then they multiply beyond what you can manage, and then those introduced species become the invasive or the pest or whatever. So it's actually quite sad, and our discussion question is also this: that why is intentional species introduction our default option for problems when it has backfired almost every single time worldwide?
I think that was my first thought. That was our first thought when we were scripting as well. That, you know, history is supposed to be for learning from our mistakes. But why is it always the default option to introduce a new species to combat a species that has become a problem right now? And I think that this article captures that essence in a very uh, diplomatic way. This line: scientists carefully select agents to target pests without harming other organisms, reducing reliance on manual labor. I think this part is very important: reducing reliance on manual labor. I think that's the motivation behind this, because labor is very expensive. Human labor is very expensive, especially in a country like UK. They do not want to pay people, and that's why they want these simple solutions, um, which seemingly simple. Again, this is not a simple solution. This is a seemingly simple solution that would end that reliance. To me, I think that's why this is being done.
But the problem with something like this introduction, where they say that the scientists have seen that there are promising results, they are mostly in controlled environments, right? It's not like a big area, probably inside a lab or in some other area where they have like introduced it on a small scale, and they're basing it on maybe like a couple of years data or maybe a couple of months data. What is it to say that 10 or 20 years down the line these introduced species are the ones that would take over and might also destroy other things and might have to really struggle to survive there, or might survive really well and wipe out everything else, and that time you would call these introduced species the actual pests? Like, why don't they take that into consideration? Why is it not that long a study to see if manual labor versus this introduction is actually a good idea? Why is it always short term?
That's the thing, and I'm not discounting the scientists' efforts to actually, scientists might have evaluated all the different possibilities. They might have, I don't know, they might have done some things to done some experiments, as Meghna said, in controlled environments and whatnot. But I don't know, like, if history is anything to go by, then this has a very high chance of not working.
Yeah, and when we say history, we literally are talking about so many places and so many things, especially in New Zealand, where they introduced species and they introduced more species to tackle the species that were introduced earlier. And then everything came for the native wildlife. And, um, they're just tackling and they're just calling all these introduced species the problem now, and they're
Mhm.
actively trying to remove them. And it's not happened just there, it's happened in multiple places, and not just on land, like in the water as well. People have introduced some species somewhere else, and then now they've like taken over. And then people have to manually go and make things like the way they were. Now that also brings me to a question of like, how do we define, like, how we talk about change and adapting to change. So once we've introduced this, obviously that is our problem. But once they've introduced and they have adapted, why do we try to hold back and go back into a time and want to correct everything? Now this is the new world, like whatever introduction has happened and whatever changes have happened, why don't we accept that and not keep trying to change everything?
I think that is, uh, again, this is the generational thing that I was talking about. In my view, that is the thing. Like, a previous generation might have done something to the environment, and they might have had very good reasons to do that. You know, to they might have had very good reasons to do that. And now the newest generation who is having to deal with that thinks that, okay, this is not good. This is not how I want to see my natural world or my environment or my surroundings or my forests or whatever. And now I want to change it back to how my father or my grandfather or my, great grandfather saw it. I want to experience that too. And in achieving that, um, this is what we end up with. This is
but
the mess that we end up with.
but it's so weird, like, I mean, our lifestyles are not the same as our grandparents or our great grandparents. Like, we have a different kind of lifestyle and a different kind of want based system. We have bigger cities and more restaurants and everything. While we can accept that change, why can't we accept the fact that, okay, if there were lupins introduced and those lupins are taking over, or those lupins are surviving there, then why don't we just accept those changes as well? We can accept changes when it comes to human settlements and human developments. So it should be the same with nature. Like, we've done our mistakes, but we don't have to keep covering them up and then making new fresh mistakes.
Exactly. And that's why I was um that's why I think the discussion came up during our scripting session as well, that why is it the default option to introduce a new species um, to combat
Some other
something,
species,
some
yeah.
other species. I think there might be some examples of where species introduction has worked, or there might be some examples where species introduction has resulted in success stories, but I feel like they're few and far between.
Yeah,
Um,
more often than not. and
mm,
and the sad part is, like, we want to keep always intervening into nature. What we've always learned is that it's survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest. That is how all the species that exist today exist, because they've survived. All the species that are getting extinct because of climate change and different kind of changes are because they're not able to survive the changes. So it's always been survival of the fittest, and somehow now at this point of time we feel like, oh, if this is surviving and this is the fittest, we still don't want it, we want the weaker ones to survive, let's help the weaker ones. I do not understand the science behind it, because we were taught literally growing up. So how is this, survival of the fittest?
I think we try to transpose our own, I guess, uh, anthropomorphize the situation a lot, because as humans, we have completely tried to um, tried our level best tried very hard to eliminate that notion of survival of the fittest. We want to help our, our pack. We want to help our everyone that is around us. We want to help them till the last breath, even after their last breath. Sometimes, um, you know, we want to do that, and we want to hold on to it, and there is an emotional reason for that, and I fully support it. I would probably do the same for my loved ones, um, but that is what I think we want to transpose. We see them as the underdogs. You know how, books that is representing this underdog. How Why is Harry Potter so famous? Harry Potter is an underdog who pushed through and, made sure that he could defeat the greatest of the villains. Similarly, Bilbo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings is the underdog, who is rising through the ranks, and we love these underdog stories, as a
Right.
species.
So are the ones that have established their foothold would have also been underdogs at some point of time, right? And now they're like the Harry Potter from the underdog. And now you're trying to introduce a new Harry Potter to
I
rise.
don't think they would have been the underdogs, because if they're successfully breeding and successfully surviving, they
They were
they
they were underdogs
they were
at
just
some
a
point of time.
minority. They were just a minority. They were not underdogs, because they are successfully breeding there. They are successfully surviving there. So they are not, never the underdogs there. They would have been a minority, yes.
No,
To start with,
when they
when they
started.
start, yeah,
When they
they would have
started.
been a minority. Like few hundred of them were introduced. So by virtue of not being many of them, they would have been a minority, but not underdogs. If they would have been underdogs, they wouldn't be able to, breed to such great numbers.
No, it actually
Um,
depends. It depends on how many were introduced. But sometimes some of them really take up and they shoot because they really can survive in that environment. So at some point of
true.
time, even they were, I don't know if the word is underdogs, but obviously they also struggled, right? They struggled initially and then they grew massively. And now they've actually established their foothold and they're like, hey, listen, I am really fit and I can survive here. But now we're like, no, we don't like you. Let's change you.
Yeah. I think that's the idea of things. Like, you don't belong here, go back.
Yes.
Um,
Oh my God, that's just not with plants. So we know that. We know it's not just with plants. But I'll just
yes.
share quickly on my screen the different kind of wait. So this is the South American weevil that's been introduced to take on the invasive plant floating pennywort. Um, it's really cute though. Looks like a insect platypus.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then this is the Japanese knotweed that they want to tackle. um Again, I don't know, I mean, it looks absolutely harmless, at least to see. And then this is the Himalayan balsam that is invading the banks of the river Avon. It's also interesting that something that probably grows in the Himalayan side, which is our side, has reached all the way in the UK. And
I mean, it is manual introduction. I mean,
definitely
the Britishers
some,
took away a lot of things, including plants and seedlings and things like that.
yeah,
Um,
I
Life
think
something.
like it's really funny. The Britishers should be blamed for most introduction in most places because they were the ones who took things from one place and introduced them to other
Modern
places.
times, yes.
Yes,
In modern times. I mean,
yes,
humans have already always done introductions. Like dingoes were introduced to Australia. They did not belong to Australia. So humans have always done introduction. Even 60,000 years ago, you know, dogs traveled with our ancestors from Africa, and they became the dingo species in Australia. So we have always done it. But modern times, certainly, the British Empire, British colonialism can be blamed for a lot of the introductions. Yes.
yes. And it's interesting though, like something like tea that was introduced to India because India was not originally a tea growing nation.
Hmm.
That stayed, and because people love tea so much, now people actually relate India with chai. And it's interesting to know that that was an introduced species. So we're okay with some introduced species if they grow
No, but
rampantly. We'll
the thing is, tea. You would never see a tea plant growing outside of a controlled area. That's the beauty of a tree or a coffee plant. It only grows in certain climates, very sensitive on where it wants to grow. So it is not fit for all climates. It is only fit for a very specific type of climate. And so somehow, I don't know how, we have managed to contain it to only tea plantations. You'll not see it, because it's such a high value plant. Also, you'll not see a stray tea plant growing anywhere else.
True, but what my point was, we can introduce some plants. We value some plants dearly, and we're okay with that invasion, but we're not okay with the other invasions. That
No,
was
but
my thing.
it
That
is not invading. If it's in a controlled setting, it is not invasion. It's
I
just
mean, it's
control.
it's
It's
not
farming.
it's not natural, right? So you have introduced something new, which is not natural to the environment, but we're
No,
okay
but
with that
it's not
because.
causing harm to the environment because it is in a controlled space.
But who are we to say what the new environment is? That is what I'm saying. Who are we to say that this is not evolving and this is what the new environment is?
Look,
Because we
a
we we're the ones who have changed everything. So why are we the ones who get to also decide? Like we have gone from places to places. We have carried animals with us. We've carried plants with us. We've introduced those plants are surviving. Now who are we to say that, oh, they shouldn't? Because if we are okay with going to all these places and surviving, and now we don't question our survival, why are we questioning these plants survival?
I think that's a good question, and I don't have an answer for that. I think that I've talked about this book a lot of time. It's called The Rambunctious Garden. It actually explores this novel ecosystem phenomena, and it sort of lists out some benefits to this phenomena as well. But I think conservationists around the globe are very aligned on this. Um, there's a consensus among conservationists and scientists alike that invasive species, I think, tea or coffee, as you mentioned, they are not native to India. They cannot be termed as an invasive species because it's not invading anywhere. It's growing in a controlled environment. If tomorrow we don't want to grow it, in a snap of our finger we can stop growing it.
I don't think
So
it would work that way. I mean, we grow it in a controlled environment, and it is really important for us. That is probably why we see it not growing anywhere else. But it might survive. We do not know the kind of mutations or the kind of
no,
difference
because
different.
it is in a controlled environment, which is controlled by tea corporations and coffee organizations. There,
Right now it is,
we
but
have
I'm
to be
saying.
sure. If we eliminate all those farms, we can be sure that there is nothing else left. But in these cases, I think for the weeds, as they are calling it, these are going rampantly without human intervention.
No, but I'm just saying that everything is an introduced species. So like you have to be okay with everything, controlled or uncontrolled. Once it's introduced, once it's doing its magic, once it's there. Because with people, we don't question that. Oh, why did you come from there and start living here and then have this whatever life? So when we don't question our survival in a place, we shouldn't question the things that we bring with ourselves and are just trying to survive. That is what I think.
I think
But
it's a difficult path to navigate, though. Wouldn't
I
you
don't
say?
know.
Because the lupins, as we discussed last time, in one of our previous episodes, they are causing serious harm. They're causing this soil to go loose, and that will end up harming the people that live there. Soil erosion, and we all know the ill effects of soil erosion and not having enough groundwater
But
and things like that.
the lupins are not on a what do you say, on a mountain or something. They're at the volcanic soil, and I don't think there's anything else growing there except for the lupins. They're not in an area, but I think it's just where people become concerned that, oh, I need, and it's not even like a big amount. Like I think it's like a little different from what the native soil is, but we just get alarmed by the smallest of changes. We don't accept those changes because it's not convenient for us to accept
No,
those
but
changes.
this is a truth you'll have to accept that invasive species are causing damage to the environment globally in terms of,
No, like you. in terms of, see, you have to see what do you call damage. So now you've introduced a species. If it's only that species surviving and nothing else is surviving, yes. But if that species is surviving along with other species, but this one is dominating and the other species are lesser, then maybe that is the new world where it exists. You know how in forests
No,
also there are
but
some.
imagine this: a species that is dominating is a short-lived species or doesn't capture enough carbon. But the species which is not dominating and it is native to that place is a long-lived or a broad-leaved plant which is capturing immense amounts of carbon.
I don't
So
think that's how it
th-
works. Like the
that
native
choice
species versus
is,
invasive. Native versus invasive can't be that big that, oh, there's the carbon wala, the carbon difference and everything. I think where it comes down to, oops,
but it
usually
has to
is,
be.
see, usually where it comes down to is just our convenience that this was introduced. It is not serving the purpose now anymore. So let us, get rid of it. It is not really, we don't even see if it has any good effects. Like we only concentrate on the negative effects of an invasive species. We never see if it has any good impact. We only and only concentrate. And that is where my problem is, that with humans, we only concentrate on the good aspects of, okay,
So you can say with certainty that every introduced species, or as every introduced species globally that is termed as an introduced species, is not causing any environmental damage, be it small or large.
I'm just saying that we probably just over exaggerated, in the sense that there are some species that are probably just thriving along with other
No,
species,
what
but
is
we
the
still have a
threshold though?
problem.
For you, what is the threshold? So, what threshold would you say it is causing an environmental damage and
So
it is worth
I will tell
removing?
you. So if it's algae that blooms on a lake and is not letting the fish under it survive at all, like if the fish are not able to breathe because that algae is just spreading all across the surface, and it's killing
Give me a
everything in its
percentage.
wake,
Like,
then yes,
it's this species is causing this amount of percentage damage to the environment, and that's what when we need to
hundred
remove it.
percent, 100%.
Like, how would you say 100% damage to the environment? How would you term that? Like,
So that is what I'm saying. So if you introduce a species and only it is surviving and it's not letting anything else survive, then yes, you need to cut back so that you can, allow other species to survive. But if it is surviving with the other species, it's probably found a way to survive with other species, and the other species have also
what
found
if
a way.
that
We do not
species,
give enough credit to the environment for its adaptability and survivability. That is what I'm saying. That we want to step in and be the god. We want to be the devil and the god at the same time. Like we want to be the ones that introduce, we also want to be the ones that save, but maybe it doesn't require saving.
and what if the species that it is affecting, the invasive species or the introduced species as we term it, is on a declining trend? What then?
So I think, see, what is actually happening is that we if so the thing is that if it is on a declining trend, that is not the problem, because a lot of species are already extinct. We have to see if that decline actually means something really bad for the environment that is there. If that decline means something, that yes, we have to do something. But if the decline only means that, oh, we're not going to see this tree anymore, that is not something that we have to actively take part in, because there might be a new novel ecosystem. So there are novel ecosystems and there are native ecosystems, and novel ecosystems are the new ecosystems. They are the ones that are going to survive because they are the ones that are new, and they are a combination of old and new, and they have found a middle ground to survive. Now if the new is absolutely overtaking the old and not letting anything breathe in its wake, then yes, we make that change. But novel ecosystems are a thing now.
I think that's like I certainly I get your point, but certainly your point that you're making, that's certainly a point that is in the minority, and I don't think any conservationist, very few conservationists will actually agree with the point of view that you're putting forward. So I think the threshold for conservationists, as you said, your threshold is 100%. The threshold for conservationists, as I see it in the news cycle as well, is 0.5% maybe, or 1%. That's the
Probably.
threshold where you
So
need to start
there are
removing.
like a lot of articles. I think there's a lot of articles as well on novel versus native. And honestly, when we're trying to weed out, the biggest weeds are us. That is my problem. When we want nothing to touch us, but we want to touch the environment everywhere, make the changes, then roll back the changes. And somehow I feel like this is also a gameplay for us, like something like, oh, we need something to do, that okay, let's go get on this area, or maybe, like, maybe if we use the money to do this, this might be productive. So now we
True,
actually
true.
have bigger
It is.
problems to
It
tackle,
is.
but
It
we're looking
is.
at the smaller problems.
It is actually serving, or it is actually satiating our mind. Actually, like, because we have solved a lot of our world's problems, it is satiating our mind. It is keeping our mind occupied also. So I think introduced species, my personal view, again, as you said, your view is 100%, my personal view would lie somewhere around that 20 to 25% threshold, where we need to really start, if it's causing 25% damage to the surrounding environment, or 50 to 20% damage to the surrounding environment, that's when we get onto its case, and start eliminating and start finding out ways to eliminate it. But at the same time, I do agree, in the point that we put forward, that this cannot be a default solution to a problems by like eliminating a native introduced species cannot happen by eliminate introducing another non-native species. Um, and because
Yeah, and
there is high
also,
chance
and
that that
and
new
also I
species will
think,
become invasive.
yeah, and also I think that it is high time that we start accepting that native ecosystems don't exist anymore everywhere. It's novel. Like, there are probably a small percentage of ecosystems across the world that are, or can be counted native, that have literally not been disturbed since the time they've evolved into that forest. So everything is a novel ecosystem now. Acceptance needs to come in. So when we do these introductions and reintroductions and removals, we need to take that into consideration. But
Mm.
we'll also get to the second part of this topic, which is
Mm.
snails on a plane. Australia flies a rescue mission to Norfolk Island for a tiny, critically endangered species. Australian scientists have undertaken the country's first large scale snail translocation, relocating hundreds of Campbell's keeled glass snails to Norfolk Island. Officially declared extinct in 1996, the species was discovered in 2020 by local citizen scientist Mark Scott, who shared photos with malacologist Dr. Isabel Hyman. The snails, measuring over 2 centimeters, were transported 1,700 kilometers from Sydney via a commercial plane in specialized crates. This ambitious 5-year project aims to re-establish a thriving population of Advena campbelli on Norfolk Island, where they previously inhabited. Researchers express high hopes for translocation success, offering a potential reversal of fortune for this critically endangered species. This effort represents a significant win for conservation. Now, obviously, this is also reintroduction, but in this case, this was already a niche where these species survived, and this niche now has a void where these species don't survive. So, in this case, it's actually great that they're reintroducing these snails, and they're doing like a large scale translocation with hundreds of snails. So this is something which still makes sense, because like, if they're uh, extinct, or if they're close to being extinct, they still have that ecosystem that they can survive in.
Um, yeah, and I think this goes
Are
on
you
to
there? Yeah.
yes, this goes on to show um the level we will go to, basically, to save, or to um lend our helping hand um to a species that really needs that help, or we think that it needs that amount of help. This is not natural. This wouldn't have been possible if everything, without human intervention, basically. So this is the amount of trouble that we go to to make sure that we can save a particular species. And I think for these conservationists and malacologists, this is the purpose of their career, their life, I think. And yeah, nobody can tell them otherwise. So
Yeah.
unnecessary,
And
maybe, but
thing with extinction and
truly,
filling niches,
um, I think there's some technical things on your end, Meghna. Um,
I think it slowed down. The system has slowed down for me.
yeah, but anyway, I think a discussion question is very interesting for this one. Can translocation truly undo extinction, or is it just delaying the inevitable? I think this article is very much related to the other one. That um, why are we helping this species compared to all the other species that we are eradicating or trying to eradicate that are surviving well, and we are helping. This is not evolution, or this is not survival of the fittest at all. So why are we doing it? I think it's to appease our mind, to keep our mind occupied, to give us that dose of intellectual stimuli, and no other reason. I think that's it. Yeah. And also, I think guilt. We
I
feel
think
the
that,
guilt.
and secondly, yeah, but I think it's also the fact that those snails were there and they were rediscovered. So we're like, oh, if they were rediscovered, why don't we introduce them? And because those snails belong there, it's one of those places where if it is reintroduced, it can survive. So it might actually like roll back that entire extinction um tag that that species has. So I think one of the things that most people have a problem with nowadays is that we're losing out on a lot of species and we're not able to see those species. So we want to grab onto every last species that exists, and we want to not give up, especially with the northern white rhino and everything. We all cried when the last one was surviving and died, because we really look forward to it as hope. Like, if a species can survive extinction, it's hope. And the bigger the species, the more the hope there is that, okay, if this species can survive, then maybe we can also survive for a longer time. So our hope is kind of tied with other species. And in this case, this is like an intentional introduction where they have bred these snails, then they're transporting them, and then they're introducing them. But there are also other things. Like, I think that's what we read about the hippos, right, with Pablo Pascobar. Like, they were introduced in Colombia, and they say that those hippos actually existed like eons back. So there was a void that they filled, like a niche that those hippos actually filled. Now there are actually too
Mm,
many hippos, that is different, but I think the hippos were able to adjust because there was a niche or a void that they were filling after so many years of being reintroduced there,
true,
even though it was not
true,
intentional with that case.
true. And I think that's
Yeah,
that's
but at the end of the day, it's feel good. I don't know how good those snails feel being there, but we definitely feel good about the fact that, oh, we helped these snails not reach extinction, and we helped these snails survive, and these snails are there all because of us.
yeah. I think that's the intellectual and sort of stimuli that we thrive for, almost, or in most of the cases. um it's a beautiful looking snail. It's something that we can get behind, and certainly um for a for a for a researcher who is focused, their career is focused on mollusks and um, snails and whatnot. Um, that's their whole purpose of their career. That's the whole purpose of them existing as a malacologist. So it is it's not undoing extinction. It like we, as much as we think that we can play god over nature and we can preside over nature, it is in no way letting us do that. But we can sleep at night thinking that, as Meghna was saying, that we have helped the species, and the species has a fighting chance of survival. Um, there are a lot more factors than just
Yeah.
us reintroducing it, but yeah, we have given it a fighting chance. I think that's the beauty of it.
Yes, and I've just shared the photo of the snail that they're talking about. It's a tiny, tiny snail. It's just 2 centimeters long, and this is the one that would be translocated, and it's the first large scale translocation. The snails are actually getting to fly on a plane. How
Mm.
many snails get to do that in their lifetime? Very few. But these hundreds of snails, they get to. They probably don't even know they're on a flight. Maybe they might. I don't know how the the atmospheric pressure or
I mean,
whatever
yeah, they would
affects
feel the
them.
change in
But
atmospheric pressures, but yeah.
yeah, but yeah, they get to fly on a plane and then they get to be reintroduced back to where they became extinct in 96. And if they were extinct in 96, this was probably way before we even spoke about our role in extinction of a species. So we do not know. Let me just check the article real quick if there's any um, mention of why these species were extinct in the first place. Let me
Yeah,
check. You can go
that would
ahead with,
be
yeah.
that will be cool. But yeah, I think it is a balance. Some species we want to eradicate, some species we want to save, and I think that's the duality that we were trying to highlight when we chose these articles. That you know, um, some species we consider as invasive ones. Definitely, by a lot of definitions, they are invasive, certainly. But these other species, they are considered super important and super helpful. And we try to spend millions of dollars, thousands of dollars, flying them on a plane and saving them. And there's a lot of public support behind those kinds of translocations and those kinds of reintroductions, as well, as opposed to something like the knotweed or the waterwort or something like that, which might have the public not backing, or public backing their eradication as well. So it is quite interesting how we pick and choose, but that's the reality. I think in my mind, it's very clear why we want to eliminate some species and versus why we want to save some species. But I think there's also a different viewpoint, which Meghna points out, that maybe we need to treat each and every one of them equally. Difficult, but worth thinking about as well.
Yeah, I think I couldn't find why they were extinct, but there is like a lot of interesting things. So this is um on Norfolk Island when they found the snails when they were rediscovered. So this is a photo of that. Also, there's a really interesting thing about the snail. It gives birth through its neck. Like so it gives
Mm,
babies through its neck, and there's a video that I'll just play. So I think this is a video of the snail giving birth to a younger one through its neck, which
mm,
is, I think that this is the first time I'm hearing of any species giving birth through its neck. But yeah, snail family. And then if we go down, this is all the research that's happening, and they said a lot of snails initially died,
mm,
but despite the early challenges, the population started growing. And this is where they start trying to like install sprinklers and different kind of things, and this is actually tagged, so you can go and see if you find them after releasing. So they have like little stickers on them or little tags on them, and they were actually able to find a few after releasing them a few months later. So they're pointing at the snail.
mm.
So yeah,
You can barely
um
see the snail
it's
in
one
that
of
photograph,
those.
so can imagine how small it is.
mm, yeah, but I think it's one of those things where at least the ones who were involved in the project are really happy about how it's turned out, because they were able to and the species was considered extinct and it was rediscovered because these people from the photographer from Norfolk had sent photos to this scientist. So maybe they were not extinct at all, but because they're so tiny and they're only found in some places, that people may not have gone to the extent of going and finding them out. So they may not have been extinct in the first place, as the IUCN had named them. It was just that they were not as regularly visible as they were earlier.
True. Very, very true. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's
But yeah, that's
a,
that's
a
so
good
there's
note
one
to
story
end our
of
talk.
intentional
Yes.
Oh, sorry, am I lagging again? Yeah,
Yes.
so I mean there are these two different polar opposite stories. One obviously of introducing something else to battle something else. And this where they've reintroduced some snail that was thought to be extinct. They have reintroduced it to back to where it belongs. So both of them have um the kind of polar opposite, but in the same way, we're always playing God to whatever species it is. We're playing God. We feel good about playing God, and we feel great when we have somehow, solved a problem, and we do not know if that problem exists or not. This is again. We just imagine that that area isn't able to survive without the snails, or the area isn't able to survive with the invasive species. So this is all our assumption. A lot of times it's not even long term data of study, because every study requires a lot of funding, and it's not possible to do those long term studies. As we talk to scientists and we discover, it's always a few years, a few years, a few years. So that's where it comes from. But it was a great episode with a lot of different topics. And even I mean, in fact, we had way more topics to cover. We just couldn't cover today.
Mm. This is one of those days where there's so much interesting things happening in wildlife and conservation news that we have to sort of keep our excitement down and keep our sort of coverage down to a certain extent. To and as Meghna has said before, we would love to talk about these things for hours and hours, and we do sometimes do that. But yeah, for the sake of the show, we try to keep it condensed into a 2 hour time period.
Yes. Um, yeah, and from my side, I think if you're from South Africa, please start a petition. Do not let that nuclear power plant come up where there's so much diverse wildlife. Apart from that, let's also try to strive and tell our governments to use AI for the great things. I mean, use it for generative purposes, but like Up said, like let's use it for wildlife, let's use it for climate change, let's use it for things that actually matter. And yeah, we would love to hear about what you think about introduced species and intentional introduction.
That's great. We'll make sure to leave the TED talk that we were talking about in the pinned comment. But other than that, that's it for our show today. As always, do not forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. As we said, this narrative needs to get out to more and more people, and I think yeah, this is a great platform to have a different view, to have a different narrative presented to you in certain fields and areas. So give us a follow on all the different social media platforms, whichever you are most active on. And if you're listening to a recorded version of this podcast episode, do consider leaving us rating. It again helps with that reach and helps getting this narrative out. A different narrative. You might not support it, you might support it, but a different narrative, you have a different narrative to listen to and think about, and it helps propagate that to more and more people. But other than that, that is it for today's episode, and we'll see you next Sunday, same time, same channel. Have a good one, guys.
Bye bye.